Welcome back to another video, you guys. We got something a little different today, so there's no activity involved because we're starting a new little segment due to the fact that at this point in the election cycle, we're starting to get some of the candidate surveys from different groups out there. So today we're going to kick it off with the first one, which is Campaign for Liberty. Got this over sometime late last week, so we're filling it out today with you guys so you can see exactly what I'm filling out rather than just hearing I got endorsed by somebody. I want to have you guys get the chance to see exactly what I'm being asked and exactly how I'm answering so that you can ask me specifically why I answered a certain way if you have any questions so that you know how I'm going to represent you better going into DC. So today we're starting with the Campaign for Liberty survey. And the first question is, the background on it is a one-time disclosure in 2011 revealed the Federal Reserve put taxpayers on the hook for over $16 trillion at the height of the financial crisis known as the Great Recession. The Fed had to be forced into releasing this information. The Audit the Fed bill would require a thorough audit of the Federal Reserve to be conducted and would remove restrictions on what the GAO can audit, bringing more transparency to the Fed and our monetary system. So question number one with that background is, will you co-sponsor and support efforts for roll call votes on the Audit the Fed bill designed to bring transparency into the Federal Reserve? My answer, there's two. It's just yes or no. So my answer is going to be yes. I think more transparency from the Federal Reserve is a good thing, period. That's it. All right, so moving on to question number two, because question number one, simply yes. Question number two, the so-called USA Freedom Act, known as the Patriot Act. All right, I don't like the Patriot Act. I already know that going into this one. Is a blatant violation of the Constitution, especially the Fourth Amendment. Also, as in the case of RICO laws, its provisions are often used for things other than its original intent. In fact, a recent study of sneak and peek warrants found that less than 1% were used for terrorism, while 92% were used for drug-related investigations. The Constitution upholds innocent until proven guilty, not if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. So question two would be, will you oppose legislation allowing roving wiretaps and warrantless searches and oppose USA Freedom Act renewal that includes such items? Let me make sure I'm reading this right, because I oppose the Patriot Act. So it's still early in the morning. I'm just getting some coffee in me, so reading's hard. Will you oppose legislation allowing roving wiretaps? Yes, I'll oppose it, because I don't agree with the Patriot Act. It does violate constitutional rights. I hate the Patriot Act. It's one thing that I want to see gone, and I'm very disappointed in the fact that it's still going on to this day and still keeps getting voted back into effect. Snoop, stop growling. Sorry for the dog. All right, moving on. Question number three. The background is using civil asset forfeiture. All right, let's pause right there. Campaign for Liberty, I don't know if you guys know, but ending civil asset forfeiture is actually part of my campaign agenda. It's in part of my planks for my campaign, so let's see what you're asking. Using civil asset forfeiture, police and prosecutors can seize citizen property, sell it, and use the proceeds to fund agency budgets. State police work with federal authorities under an equitable sharing scheme to pocket a portion of the proceeds from the seizure, enabling local law enforcement to circumvent state law and continue to profit from civil asset forfeiture. Property owners are effectively guilty until proven innocent, as they are forced to bear the cost of going to court and burden of proving their property's innocence. So question number three is, will you support legislation that would end policing for profit, including equitable sharing, require charges to be filed before any assets are seized by law enforcement, and ensure that property is returned if charges are dropped or the suspect is acquitted? Yes, absolutely. Like I said, ending civil asset forfeiture is part of my campaign agenda. So I'm absolutely on board with that question. Moving on to number four. Americans are taxed enough and pay more in taxes every year than they do on food, clothing, and housing combined. One of the best ways to ensure a strong economy is to guarantee people keep more of the money they earn. Will you oppose all tax and fee increases and vote for tax cuts? Yes. That's easy. Look, our issue isn't we have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. And we've talked about that before throughout the campaign. Actually, the last video we made dove into a lot of this exact topic when we talked about universal basic income and expanding unemployment benefits for the corona response. So if you want a little more in depth on how I feel about our taxes and our government spending, you can go to that video, which should be the last one right before this one on the channel, to get a little bit more in depth information on that one in my position. Again, that one is titled Unemployment Benefits and UBI. So that's the title of the video if you want to go back on the YouTube channel and get a little bit more in-depth answer. Moving on to question number 5. The United States debt surpassed $23 trillion in 2019. That is over $60,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. By refusing to cut unnecessary wasteful spending and continually raising the debt ceiling, the U.S. government is passing the debt on to our children and grandchildren for generations to come. Will you support efforts to slash wasteful spending and oppose any debt limit increase? Yes. Again, I went into this type of question a lot more in depth in the last video that we did. But again, we should be looking to cut spending all across the board. There's been proposals like cutting 1% to every single agency in every part of our government. That type of stuff could have a pretty good effect on how everything goes moving forward. It's a small cut, but starting to get us into that right mindset. The point is we need to start cutting some of the spending because we just can't afford to keep doing it. Again, reference the last video we made, the unemployment benefits and UBI, for more information on my position on that part. Moving on to question number 6, unelected bureaucrats have unconstitutionally ruled virtually every aspect of citizens' lives by decree for decades. Over the last decade, government agencies have added nearly 80,000 pages a year in new regulations. Estimates are that these burdensome federal regulations as a whole would cost the economy over $2 trillion every year. Legislation known as the REINS Act would force Congress to approve any new major regulation with a roll call vote before it could take effect. Will you support all efforts to slash government bureaucracy, increase accountability, and vote to pass the REINS Act? Yes. Ending the bureaucracy, although I refer to it oftentimes more so as an aristocracy just because of the attitude of our politicians. But ending the bureaucracy and increasing accountability are focal points of my campaign. If you've been watching me for a while, you know that based on the fact that I've been talking about we need a return to representation and how a lot of our problems in our government stem from the fact that politicians have a complete disconnect between the policies that they're enacting on us and the consequences of those same policies, because oftentimes they don't apply to politicians the same way they do to me and you. All right. Again, you can go back through some previous videos for more information on that. Number 7, moving on, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, increased costs and regulations on both businesses and consumers, despite claims that it would do the opposite. Insurance options are dwindling, medical care and insurance premiums are skyrocketing, and in some states, the cost of a family insurance policy has surpassed the average cost of rent. Despite Obamacare's failures, some are advocating for a complete government takeover of health care via Medicare for all. Will you support legislation to fully repeal Obamacare and oppose efforts to give the federal government more control of healthcare? All right, so, expanding healthcare and stuff kind of falls in line, again, with Snoop. Quiet. Sorry for the dog. But expanding Obamacare and healthcare, Medicare for all, those types of things are going to have a lot of the same issues I have with those as what I explained in universal basic income in the last video. Again, Snoop. Shh. So let me make sure I'm reading the question right. Will you support legislation to fully repeal Obamacare and oppose efforts to give the federal government more control of healthcare? Yes. Again, the government has failed at everything it's done. I made this point in the last video. War on terror failed. War on climate change failed. War on drugs failed. Stability in the Middle East failed. We have a pretty much 100% failure rate at this point, and the answer to someone who sucks at everything they do is not to give them more responsibility, is to start giving them less. The Medicare for all and stuff, I'm going to say the same thing like I said with universal basic income, where I think it makes more sense at a state level, but at the federal government level, there's absolutely no case for it whatsoever from how I look at it. So if you want to have that conversation, it needs to be had at the state level, not at the federal level. Moving on, question number 8. The Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution guarantees American citizens' right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, yet following every tragic shooting perpetuated by criminals, politicians in Washington, D.C. moved to limit the rights of law-abiding citizens. Recently, everything from red flag confiscation to arbitrary limits on magazines to a national gun registry has been on the table. The fact is that these so-called solutions won't work. The only way to stop a bloodthirsty criminal with a gun is if good people are armed and ready to fight back. So question number 8, will you oppose all infringements on law-abiding citizens' Second Amendment rights? Answer, yes. If you've been watching my campaign, you already know I oppose anything that could be an infringement on the Second Amendment. I support constitutional carry. I support rolling back all of the restrictions that have been put in place, and I support not adding any new restrictions because the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. Plain and simple. That means that it can't be infringed. It's not that hard to grasp the concept of. All right, moving on to question number 9. Under Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, only Congress has the power to declare war. The U.S. has not declared war since World War II. Our fighting men and women should never be sent into a war that has not been directly declared by Congress. Will you oppose using military action without a congressional declaration of war? Yes. Again, I've gotten into this one a few times with the campaign in the past, if you want to dig for some more information, but kind of brief overview. You know, I'm an Iraq veteran. I fought in these wars. I know the mindset of our politicians and how they're treating these wars. I don't like it. I've actually been impacted very negatively because of it, having been a veteran. We got a lot of issues going on. I don't agree with it. It doesn't help our international relations. In a lot of cases, it makes us a lot weaker simply because of the fact that then we're going in as an interventionalist, and a lot of the places don't like us doing that. Some do. Don't get me wrong, there are people in Iraq who actually liked us being there, but a lot of times you get, two sides of the same coin. A lot of people that don't like us there, and it makes us weaker when we're interfering with things like that and giving power to somebody to go in and then do what we've been doing without the declaration of war from Congress. That circumvents the Constitution. We're supposed to have checks and balances in there for a reason. Congress needs to vote on these wars or pull everything back. That's just what needs to happen, in my opinion. Okay, so that takes care of all of the questions. So, well, I guess you can't really see it. Let me see if I can flip this. So now we got it flipped around. You can see all this stuff. And we're just, never mind. All right, I was going to show you guys me signing it, but I can't hold the camera and do all that at the same time. So, whatever, I'm signing it. Today's date is, I don't think it's the 18th. There's the wife's phone. Oh, it is the 18th. I thought my watch was off. All right, so today's date, 18 May, 2020. And that's it. So I hope that I'm filling out just some of the basic information on this at the end of it. I hope that gives you guys a bit of an idea of how I feel about some of these. Whether you agree with my positions on these or not, like I said, the main thing is I want you guys to be able to have the chance to actually see what my answers are to the questions I'm actually being asked for these endorsements. Because we have been getting a few of them now, a few of these candidate surveys. And while I fill them out and it does some good for the people who are asking the questions, it doesn't do any good for you guys who are watching my campaign and are wanting to know more about me and my positions and how I'm going to represent you going into November any better if I'm not sharing with you how I'm responding to these. So we're going to start doing these more. I've got another one that I need to fill out this week. I don't know who it's for. I haven't really taken a look at it yet. So we'll go ahead and pull those out. I'm going to get this back into the mail, send this out. Anyways, again, I'm John Molnar. I'm the Libertarian candidate for Utah's 4th District Representative to United States Congress this year. Don't forget to vote for me. Like, click, subscribe to follow along and hear more. And don't forget to vote for me in 2020 to tell DC enough. Out.